Hey everybody, welcome to the Moms Making Money Show. I'm your host, Amie Pederson, business mentor and confidence coach for the new and emerging female entrepreneur. Today we are going to be talking to the lovely Carissa Johnsen about how she went from being anxious Annie to sassy savage. And she's also going to reveal to us a little bit about how she overcame the obstacles that she had as a teenager and switched that all around to becoming a college graduate and then a counselor, and then how she shifted once more from counselor to coach. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Carissa. Tell us a little bit about yourself and, give us kind of the rundown of this journey. And everybody listening, make sure you listen to the end because she has a special gift for us as well. So take it away.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I definitely have been listening to your podcast for a little bit now since we initially spoke, and you always deliver amazing content and you have a ton of guests, and I know you get a ton of applications. So I feel super honored to be here and share my story, my journey, and just in hopes that it inspires somebody else because, all of my journey is wrapped around and within somebody, believing and supporting me. And so I'll kind of just jump right into that. As Amie said, a lot of my early journey in my teenage years in high school was filled with a ton of anxiety and self-doubt and depression. I struggled a lot from, early high school with doubting myself, feeling overwhelmed with anxiety and, having a single mom and not really knowing how to go from having all these feelings and like living in the world. And especially with high school, nowadays it's a little bit worse than when I was a kid. Yes. But it's very overwhelming trying to be yourself and to show up and having all these fears and insecurities. And so, I just felt anxious all the time. And my parents, they didn't really put me in counseling, but were like, here, take this medication and kind of just deal with it this way, and they were doing the best that they could, but I didn't really have a lot of people to support me emotionally and be there for me in the way that I needed. And so, I had a ton of anxiety. And so I got in a ton of trouble, to be honest with you. I was like 14. Well, I guess I'll backtrack a little bit. I was like 14, hanging out with people who were like 18 years old, getting involved in drugs and alcohol and partying. I almost dropped out of high school, or I almost not dropped out of high school, but like that's what I was anticipating and on the path that I was on, because I was just doing all of the things to soothe the pain and because I didn't know how to deal with it. And so fast forward into high school, my mom relocated me because she was like, I got kicked out of high school, or I got kicked out of junior high. All these things happened. I got an arrest record. My mom was like, we got to take you out of this area. Like you are getting involved in way too much shit and we need to get your ass together. So she was like, best way to do that, we're going to relocate you. And so I got relocated and then I started high school and I was still doing the same stuff. I wasn't showing up for class. I was like, even when I was showing up, I wasn't turning in anything. I was going to school stoned. I don't think I shared that last time we talked, but I was going to school high and I just wasn't being authentic because I was trying to fit in. I was trying to numb my emotional pain. And I didn't really have the support that I needed. And so, I kept doing the same stuff. And then I finally had this professor, his name was Mr. Micheletto, and he reached out to me like a couple months ago and I just bawled because he's had such an impact on my life. And he called me on my shit and he was like, you know what? Like you have so much potential. You could be doing this. You're not doing that. And he just started to mentor me and was like, made me stay after school with him. He really helped me, made me do like the newspaper club, which I wasn't like a nerd, like, quote unquote, like a nerd like that. Like I was like went from the druggy party girl to, getting involved in Business Professionals of America and clubs just because I had the accountability and support and belief from somebody else. And that to me was like just changed the trajectory of my entire life. He believed in me. He sat me down and made me apply to college. My mom was a single parent. I didn't have any money. I was like, how the hell am I going to get into college? He's like, I don't know. We're going to figure it out. So he wrote my letters of recommendation and really helped me. And then as soon as I got into college, I was like, I just became obsessed with the idea of being there and available for other people, believing in them, supporting them, challenging the shit out of them. Because, I had people who loved and supported me, but didn't call me out on my shit. And so as soon as I got into college, I became obsessed with not only figuring out how to help myself, because I was still very anxious at the time too, but then I became obsessed with how do I help other people? And so natural, field to go into is psychology. And so I just loved learning about the brain and the body connection. I'm very into health and fitness. And when I started to work out and I started to piece together like, oh my God, I actually feel a little bit different and like endorphins were going. And so it just kind of snowballed into something so much bigger. And I just kept challenging myself. I started, having other people hold me accountable. I got involved in other organizations. I ended up, I was a first generation college student. I was a vice president of the Honor Society. I was in a sorority. Not that any of these things matter, but going from, party girl and drugs to all of these things, people were like, holy shit, like, how did you do that? And so I graduated with my master's degree in clinical psychology. So the path I wanted to go down was I wanted to become a doctor for all of the wrong reasons. I really just wanted to be Dr. Johnson because I had overcome all these things. And so, I was still a little anxious kind of working through those things, but it just snowballed over time. I just became obsessed with personal development. And so when I got done with graduate school, the path was go to get my doctorate, which I ended up getting waitlisted for and then ended up not getting in. And so I went into community mental health. And so I became a licensed professional counselor. I loved that so much. I loved helping people. But for me, the difference was I really couldn't like be there in the way that I wanted to. There's a lot of things in psychology that I love and a lot of things that I don't necessarily agree with. I didn't want to tell people what was wrong with them. I more or less wanted to look at what is right with you and how do we strengthen that. And so this was like, 6 years ago when the positive psychology movement was actually evolving. And so I was studying meditation and well-being and all these things. And the people in my graduate school cohort were kind of like, what the hell are you doing? Like, we're very scientific. Clinical psychology is very much like data, empirical support, and all this stuff. And I was very much like, started to develop into the woo-woo coach, or into at least counseling. But I couldn't be there the way that I wanted to. And so, after community mental health, I was like, you know what? I really want to, figure out where I belong in this world. I knew it was helping people. I knew it was supporting people, but I didn't know how it looked. And so I started to hear about coaching. And this was, like now it's taking off crazy, but this is when it first started like happening. And I was like, okay, what is this about? And so I went to a meetup group that was supposed to have like 15 women. Actually not 15 women. It was just 15 people, coaches in the suburbs that I used to live in. And only one woman showed up. And so I was kind of like, this is interesting. Like one woman shows up and we end up sitting down and talking for hours. And she ends up telling me that she's a coach and she helps women. She was actually a cancer survivor and wanted to help women. And so when I told her I wanted to become a coach, she was kind of like, well, I could help you. And so that's when I hired my first coach. I knew that it was meant to be like when all these people RSVP'd and only one person showed up, I was like, okay, this is meant to be. So that was my first coach. I would think I was 23 years old, 24 years old. And she helped me start a business. And so I started getting all these clients and I started really, just evolving into what is a coach, helping women with confidence and all these things. But then I didn't deal with my own anxiety in the way that I needed to. And so everything really started to crumble. I started to get very overwhelmed. I went through a really toxic breakup. And I couldn't wrap my head around how to help other people when I hadn't really emotionally evolved in the way that I wanted to. And so that business failed. And I think that helped me in so many ways because it showed me how quickly like you can build it. But if you don't take care of yourself and you can only take people as deep as you're willing to go. And I wasn't really willing to go that deep just yet. And so I took a break from owning my own business and really just worked on myself. I got off my antidepressant medication. I got a corporate job as a coach working with other people with anxiety and depression. So I was simultaneously working on myself and supporting others. And that platform really helped me so much. And then so fast forward to this year, I was helping all these people, but I was just like, I don't really want to work with college students because that's what I was doing. I was in the corporate world working with college students. And I was like, it just women, spirituality, all these things really called me so much. And so I just had to listen. So in July of this year, I quit my corporate job without having anything together, which I don't necessarily recommend, but I quit my corporate job and, took a big dip financially, but luckily I had some things put together. I moved in with my boyfriend. All these things. And within the next month, I had already replaced my income. I started getting clients. The next month after that, I was featured on a couple of podcasts. I had several paid speaking gigs lined up, and it just started to evolve into something much bigger. And then, so now I'm working on helping business. I'm a business coach helping women work on their mindset in addition to their business strategy to help them hit their first 5K month. And so this has been, a long journey. I've been a coach for 4 years now, but I finally feel like I'm in a good place emotionally and in my niche and who I'm helping. And so it's been a long time. I think, this is a testament for people who think like you can just happen like that. Like they see that I quit my corporate job in July and now we're in January of the following year. And they're like, holy shit, all these things have happened for you, but they don't realize that behind the scenes, this has been years in the making. And so I think that people hearing my story and that like, this has been so up and down can really speak truth to that. Like it does take time and patience and more importantly, dedication to being a student of what you're practicing.
Agree. And I love that you talk about how when you very first started, you started to have all that anxiety. And then that was something that you quickly realized like, oh my God, I have to get this in check.
Yeah.
I feel the reason I'm bringing this up is I feel like myself and so many other, female and probably even male entrepreneurs, when they're first starting out, it is such a scary, like the first step is, it's so scary. It's the hardest step. And I feel like so for me, making sure that I had all the self-care and all the, all the different things, that was like the good advice that I didn't take because I was like, oh, that's not going to happen to me. And it did. It was like you get right on the fast track to burnout. And with that comes the anxiety comes first before you hit that place of burnout, like the universe kind of giving you a little nudge like, hey, lady, listen. And then of course you're like, oh yeah, I'll listen to you later. And then you're like, oh, I can barely stay awake. And all of everything just kind of
Mm-hmm.
So what is like one thing, I know there's probably a million things, but what is one thing that you would tell a new female entrepreneur or male when they're just starting out to kind of help them take a step around that, inevitable almost anxiety, how to kind of prevent that?
This is something that I'm teaching a course right now and it's called Sassy Side Hustle to Savage Business. And it's all about mindset and business strategy. But I think mindset is the foundation for everything. And so many people, including myself, want to skip this step.
Yes.
Right? There are even days where I have a shit ton of stuff to do. And I'm like, oh, I just want to like do my mindset work later. I'll work on that later. I'll journal later. I'll read later. And for me, it just, when I don't take care of myself first thing, I definitely feel different throughout the day. I don't show up energetically like I'm supposed to. And so for me, starting on your entrepreneurship journey, I think 80% of your success is going to come from mindset and 20% is going to come from strategy and doing the business stuff behind the scenes and all of that stuff. So for me, what I would suggest would be to figure out, it doesn't have to be, for me, I'm very routine oriented. So I love like getting up in the morning, journaling, working out, making breakfast, slowing down in the morning, especially with anxiety. I always had this thought that I don't have enough time for anxiety. Like I don't know what it is, but it's like, you always feel like you don't have enough time. So you're operating under this scarcity mindset around time that really messes with you. When you don't feel like you have enough time, you don't do the basic things. You're not mindful, you're not present. And when you're not any of those things, it's really hard to show up energetically for your clients, your customers, like showing up online and all of that. So for me, that was the first thing I had to tackle, was the belief around I could have enough time. So I had to make the time. And that was slowing down in the morning. And whatever that means to the entrepreneur is one thing. For me, it meant like getting up in the morning quietly and peacefully, like early too. Like I'm an early bird. You don't necessarily have to do this, but I think just making the time. But for me, I love getting up early because then I feel like I have enough time. If I wake up at 9 o'clock, it's like, oh my God, everybody's up already. People are online. I have 35 emails. So it's making the time. And I think in the morning and whatever that means to you, if that feels like, if it's like walking your dog, if it's spending some extra time cuddling with your husband, if it's playing with your kids in the morning, filling up your cup so much that it just pours out and overflows into everything else you do, your day just feels so much easier. And so I would suggest making time in the morning to make sure that your cup is overflowing, whether that's with nutrition, exercise, journaling, all of that. And that would be the basic. A lot of people don't like to journal and read and whatever. And so that's fine. So this could be a general concept for most people, is just spend time in the morning taking care of yourself before you do anything work related. And I think that will totally transform how you show up, how you present, and the ease with which you create too. Because then you don't feel like you're operating under like, I don't have enough time, because then you're never like coming from a source, like a place of inspiration. It's more of desperation, which never equals out to be like something good necessarily. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I think anybody can relate to the feeling of like feeling rushed, like whether you go to a day job and you're running 10 minutes late in the morning, you're like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And the whole way there, you're just like this bundle of nerves, like, go, 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 come on, car in front of me. Because obviously when you're late for work, there's always a slow car in front of you. And so you're like, go, 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 go.
Yeah. And then you cuss them out, and then it's like, it never works out.
Yeah. And so then that's that whole ripple effect of it's just one of those days, but it doesn't have to be one of those days all day long.
Right. Yeah. You definitely have the ability to, even if you start your day that way, to just take like 5 minutes. If you don't have 5 minutes for yourself, entrepreneur, like, if you're in a 9-to-5 job, whatever, you really should rethink your day. If you don't have 5 minutes to yourself each and every day, you got to rethink how you're prioritizing your day. Because I know your ass is probably spending 30 minutes on social media in the morning, all these things. So you got to make 5 minutes, because if you're driving to work frantic, you're cussing out this other person, that energy, that vibration that you're showing up in the world is going to attract more of that throughout the day. And so that's why people say it's just one of those days, because energetically you started out really shitty. And so you're attracting more of that throughout your day.
Yeah. And the more you say it's just one of those days, you basically manifest the entire rest of your day, That is so funny. And I love too that you mentioned that mindset is 80%, because I fully believe that. I often give the analogy that, a lot of people coming from like health and fitness, so you can relate to this, that I look at mindset and even like belief, just something as simple as believing in yourself, believing in your message, believing in your purpose. I feel like that's the 80%. Like you have to believe, because, things creep in, self-doubt comes in here and there, learning how to, speak kindly to ourselves, and, or even if you're like, no, we're not listening to that today, and you're a little bit abrupt with yourself, but staying on, that flexing your belief muscle. And then, so yes, you can get results. I spoke with somebody once, and she's somebody who's huge in the industry and mindset. And she was like, girl, you could basically just manifest a winning lottery ticket. But here's the thing. That's true. You probably can. And there's a chance you could find one laying on the road, like the golden ticket that Charlie found for the chocolate factory. He found it, right? But I'm kind of a believer, and I'm sure you're much the same, that you have to take some action. Like you're not going to win the lottery unless you get the ticket, right? You like buy the ticket. So that's where that 20% comes in. So I always relate that back to nutrition and fitness. Like, yeah, you can get results with just nutrition and you can get results with just fitness. But when you put the two together, that's when the magic happens. So that's the same with your mindset and strategy. When you really believe that you can do it and you're conscious about it, and you're, just, I don't even know what the right word is, but like you're at peace with yourself and with your message and, the movement that you're starting. And then you add the strategic steps, because I feel like once you know those are easy, right?
Yeah, right.
That's when the magic happens.
Because so many people have created now blueprints for business, but not everybody can master. I think everybody can master their mind, but not everybody's willing to, because it takes consistent effort. And so if you're like you said, if you're like pairing, you can do one or the other, but when you do both, you have exponential growth. And that is truly where I think entrepreneurs flourish, is when they're willing and open to working on both.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people too, so maybe you can kind of speak on this. It's a bit off topic. It's something that I'd spoken to my spiritual self-care coach about, is some people are like, I'm not getting into all of this woo-woo garbage because I'm a Christian, or I believe in religion, whatever your religion is. And this is by no means any kind of like knock on religion, but you can embrace your religious beliefs as your spirituality. You can, instead of, saying the universe has your back, you can say that God or spirit or whatever your belief is has your back, and kind of build your faith around that instead of the universe, say.
Right. Yeah. I think what I've learned about psychology is that we all want to feel like we have a sense of control, but when we feel like we have to control, it's kind of overwhelming. And so that's where the place of the universe, God, whatever you believe in, spirit, angels, even if you just believe in something bigger than you, or if you believe in if you believe in just some, like that you don't have control over everything, it becomes easier to sit with. When we have too much control, or we believe we have too much control over everything, it can be overwhelming. And then people, they don't operate very well. So when you have faith, when you have connection to something greater, you can sit with more ease. Like you can feel more grounded. You can like just lean on that, because we all go through life. None of us go through life alone. And I think a lot of people, especially like entrepreneurs, think that they have to do everything alone. Right. And that's like a big issue that I had at the beginning. I have to do this and alone and this and alone. And that could go into outsourcing and everything. But when you feel like you have support, like spiritually, and even in addition, like to just like on this earth, you feel like you can like, you sit better with it, and you feel like you can show up in the world differently. Like, I don't even know how to like necessarily explain it, other than when we have too much control, we feel like we have too much control and everything is on us. That's very heavy weight on our shoulders. And then we kind of are like, well, what do I do? When we believe in something greater than ourselves, it gives us peace. It gives us like a sense of just faith that things aren't like, we don't have control over everything. And that sometimes things are just kind of meant to happen the way that, they're supposed to.
Yeah. And I think all of us, whether you're religious based or not, we've all heard that it's, everything happens for a reason or fate or whatever.
Yeah.
And I love what you were mentioning about how we sometimes just like to like, I say like, give it to the universe or whatever. Or, some people say, I'm going to give this to God and let him guide me. Even something as simple as, a card pull, whether it's a tarot card, an angel card, an oracle card. I have, cards about crystals, like what kind of crystal do you need in your life right now? It's not even like that they're like witchy voodoo magic or anything. It's just like, okay, I just need something, anything to give me that permission that I already know. Yes. Like deep down inside, you already know the answer to it, but it's like, okay, yes, like that card was spot on for what I need to do and what I'm going through and whatever. But it's almost just like you just need that, like you said, something that you're not in control of to give you that nudge.
Right. Yeah. Because like our brains go crazy sometimes, right? Like
yes.
we have a lot of existential questions, as in like, what is the meaning of, why are we here? What's the meaning? What is my passion and what is my purpose and all these things? And we can get your mind can literally drive itself crazy thinking all those things. So we're all looking for something tangible, something we can like hold on to, something we can lean on for guidance, so that we don't feel so much pressure to come up with all of the stuff on our own. That's a lot of energetic weight and like pressure that you're putting on yourself. So it can come down to a tarot card or, like astrology, like little horoscopes or the stars or just whatever. It's just leaning on something that's greater than you, that you can believe is helping you, supporting you, guiding you in whatever direction that is.
Yes, I love that. And I often rely on the moon. Like, what's the moon doing? Is it almost a full moon? Is it almost a new moon? And like we talked about before, we started recording, like what was Mercury doing the last time that we talked, like that kind of stuff. Were we having technical difficulties? Was it, were the stars just not aligned, and that's just, and we get a good laugh out of it, even though we both believe in that. It's just like, oh, okay. Yeah. It was out of our control and it is what it is, know?
Yeah. I think it's kind of, in my opinion, it's silly for us to believe that all of these things aren't connected. Like if you think like I'm moving to California soon, and I was thinking about like, we were just like researching places to live and everything. And then just looking at like, there's so much world out there and we are so trapped in our own bubble. And like, we live in this state and here are these people and here are these people and they all just walk around and operate. But the world is massive. And like we haven't even discovered half of what's in our galaxy and our universe. And to think that all these things aren't connected, I think is kind of silly, right? Like that, like the way that the sun, everything orbits together and like the planets, it's just like, there's things that are functioning outside of like what we can really make sense of. Right. Why is that happening? So I think it really helps us when you think about us and how tiny we are and like our little lives. It's just like, there's just so much amazing miracles, like stuff that we can't even explain out there. And so when you look at the world and how beautiful it is in the universe and all that, it's hard not to believe in something truly greater and bigger than us.
Yeah, that's so funny. When I was a kid, I used to ask my dad, like, so, well, like we have Earth and then there's outer space and, there's the Milky Way and there's our galaxy, but where does it go?
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
Where does it go? Does it just like drop off where we can't see anymore? He would like look at me like, I don't know. Like, well, because, obviously like gravity and the sun and the stars and all that stuff. It's all science backed and whatever. But then it's like, where does it go? Like, because we've only seen to where we can reach, and where we can send a satellite. But, so he always like thought I was like asking these like probably pretty quick, like crazy questions, because he's like got that engineer mindset, everything's logical and fits in its box and whatever. And I'm like, but where does it go? What's after that? What's next? Like, how do we know? Like, is space its own planet contained by God or whatever? And he's like, look at me like I'm like a total loon. And he's like, I don't know. He's like, maybe in your lifetime we'll find out. I'm like, oh, okay. And so like, it's weird because that's like been a burning question since I was like 7 years old, making the little planet diorama or
solar
whatever.
system. Yeah.
But now it's like, now that I'm older and I have, I work with an astrologist and I work, and we work with, the numbers and like, it's so funny when you even like the science behind it, that everything has a vibration, and people think that's crazy, but it's like, when you say like, okay, but our body is made of atoms, which are made of protons, neutrons, electrons, then they're like, oh, I guess it is kind of like an energetic thing. And so that's how, like, that's like the logical side of me thinking of, because I was always a science nerd, but putting it into perspective for a lot of people that, there's science behind all this woo-woo too,
Yeah, there actually is. I think a lot of people need that too, because it's very abstract.
Yeah.
And so some people need those like tangible, logical, scientific things. And there really is science behind a lot of it. I mean, you could watch a ton of documentaries on Netflix about all this stuff. But I think sometimes people get like scared about like things they don't know a lot about because it's unfamiliar. But, I encourage everybody who's listening on this podcast, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners probably are very woo-woo and spiritual, but, there's always more to be learned. There's like the thing about the ocean, how much more there is to be discovered and all of that. It's just, when you sit back and think about the world and just really like take a break from technology and like everything and just sit with yourself for a moment and just in peace and look around you and think about the world, it's just, I don't know. For me, it just always keeps me grounded in like this. There's just so much more out there that we think the world is about. It's not about necessarily money and monetary things, and that while all that stuff is amazing, it's just life is about something so much greater than what we even think.
Yeah, agree. And it's funny. I changed my perspective a little bit on money when I looked at it like this, and I don't even remember where I heard this. Maybe you've heard it before, and you'll be able to pick up on who said it. It was that, obviously we've heard that money's an energetic exchange, blah, 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 but that it just became too cumbersome to put a cow in your pocket to go trade for goods. So they came up with, they started out as notes, like, and so that's, it was almost like an IOU, right? Type of thing. Like, okay, I'm going to give you this for that because it's too hard for me to bring my cow here to trade you. You know what I mean? So it was almost like a placeholder. So really it has zero significance in the grand scheme of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I always think about the cow.
Yeah. I think when you think about it like that, it makes it seem a little bit more like, it doesn't seem so overwhelming. I think a lot of society has told us that like, you have to have this and that. And so when we think about money and, we could go into whole mindset things about how we have adopted our parents' mindset around money and all that, but it just feels very overwhelming for people. And so when you think about it, it's just an exchange and that you actually like, while there is a dollar amount, it's your belief, it's your beliefs and your mindset around the value of money and what it means to you that's actually causing you to feel a certain way about it.
Right. And I agree with that 100%. But I also feel like maybe we're a little bit detached from it because it's not the same. All of our money is kept on a credit card, kept in a bank. Everything's digital, right? So it's not like looking outside and being like, I've got 10 cows out there. I'm doing pretty good. Or I've got 100 cows. It's like, oh, how much money do I have in the bank? I'm going to have to go over to my computer or my phone just to find out. And then I have to pay, $5 to get it out of the bank. And, it's just a completely different, like, I don't know, for me, it's a completely different mindset than if I were like, oh, I've got 10 cows out in the yard.
Yeah, you could like actually see them roaming out there eating grass.
Yeah, you could see them roaming and growing. And, for me, it's just different. So that is completely off topic, you guys. I'm sorry.
I love that, though. I think that's helpful.
Awesome. Well, I know you have a free gift for everybody. And it was called Cash in Your Passion. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that before we hop off?
Sure. Yeah. Cash in on Your Passion is a mini workbook on how to go off of, like, I think there's it's called a Venn diagram, essentially. Like, a lot of people are getting caught up in, how do I make money and how do I do it outside of my corporate job, or how do I actually make a business out of it? I get a lot of women, because I work with newbie coaches, who don't necessarily, they're multi-passionate and don't necessarily know how to identify what they want to make money off of, or start a business or have like a little side hustle. And so this mini workbook is going to help guide them between, like, what are you passionate about? Like, and what do people see you as the authority in, and what can you make money with? Right. So like that middle sweet spot is the section where you can really capitalize on something that makes you happy, that's going to make you money, and that also other people want and need support with. And I think sometimes it's hard to conceptualize all those things when you have like so many things you like. I love health and fitness and nutrition and money and cows and all these things. And so it's really going to help the individual narrow down all of these things and figure out how they can make money doing something that they love. I think whether you're in a 9-to-5 or you're making a business or creating a business, I think it's important that you do something that brings you joy. And if it's not at your 9-to-5 and you're just like, I just do this to make money, that's great. What else is going to bring you joy? Do you have something like that's on the side that brings you happiness? And maybe you can make money doing it too. I do think for me, it's really important to build multiple streams of income just in case the economy crashes and, whatever happens with my coaching practice or whatever,
right,
that people feel like they have, they do things they love, they can make money doing it, and that they don't have to worry about, if things crash or don't work out. So this is going to be a small mini workbook for people to identify what they're passionate about, what they can make money doing, and how they can create a business out of it.
Maybe there's a part in there about growing cows. No, just kidding.
Hey, you never know. Maybe I'll include it as an extra bonus.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today and sharing all of this. Like I said, I could talk to Carissa all day long. It's been such a delight. And this is the second time we've spoken, because the first interview, like I said, we had some technical difficulties. So yeah. I have had the pleasure of recording this interview twice now.
Yeah, it's been so much fun. I really appreciate you having me on. And for those of you listening, if you are looking for another female support group for growing your business online, I host a free community on Facebook called the Savage Society, where I give out a lot of free content. I'm actually doing trainings on there every Monday. It's free. There's a lot of great mindset and spiritual and business strategy work in there. And so I'd love if you hopped on in there and joined me and take advantage of the freebie too.
Yes. Also, what's the best place for them to find you or connect with you on social media?
Yeah. So as I talked about, I am also known as the Sassy Savage. That's my alter ego identity, overcoming my anxious Annie and becoming, a bolder, more blunt, honest version of me, the person that's always been inside of me. So it's the Sassy Savage. You can find me on there on Facebook. My name is Carissa Johnsen. You can friend me. I accept a lot of people until I probably get to 5,000, and then I can no longer accept anyone. I guess that's the cap. Yeah. And then I have the free Facebook community, which is the Savage Society.
Perfect. Well, I hope all of you guys take advantage of this amazing free offer that she's given to us. It's going to be such a useful tool, especially if you're not quite sure what that next or even first step is going to be. So thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll be seeing Carissa again on this show.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Talk to you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.